Lee called out to the zombie king, referring to it as glowy eyes, and he asked the king to listen carefully. Then he shouted, saying he is the only one who could bully his comrades. Junmo and the others were taken aback, and some of them were even a little bit upset by Lee's comment. Suddenly Lee received a message from the system, warning him to be cautious since a large amount of his mana was consumed in a very short amount of time. Lee glared at the message. Despite his big talk, he knew that there's not much he could do, since he only had 32% of his mana left, and he also had no clue as to how to take down the zombie king. The zombie king reached forth his hands, and it prepared to launch its tentacles at Lee. Lee took a defensive stance, questioning if the zombie king was a ranged-type monster, and he prepared to launch Failnaught as a counter. But before firing its tentacles, the zombie king noticed that Lee was standing beside one of the pillars, so it hesitated to attack. This left Lee in a daze, and he questioned why the zombie king was hesitating to attack him. As Lee and the zombie king were locked in a face-off, Junmo called out to Kyunjin and Taeyong, and after they answered him he ordered them to open their gear. Junmo, Kyunjin, and Taeyong dropped their backpacks on the ground. Junmo's backpack was filled with rations and potions, while the others were filled with beads. As this went on, Lee turned his attention to the pillar beside him, and he questioned if the zombie king was hesitating because of the vase on the pillar. Instead of attacking Lee, the zombie king suddenly charged towards him, crushing most of the other zombies that had manifested. And it tried crushing Lee as well, and as the zombie king's massive foot drew closer, Lee looked up, and he gritted his teeth. Then he moved himself out of the way using skill combo. However, the skill combo left him in an awkward position, and the zombie king, who had succeeded in getting Lee to move away from the pillar, tried to exploit this. He launched its tentacles at Lee. The tentacles surrounded Lee, and the agitated Lee gritted his teeth because in that moment it seemed like it was over. However, Junmo called out to him, and after getting his attention, Junmo, Kyunjin, and Taeyong threw the things inside their backpacks at Lee. But this also got the attention of the zombie king. It released Lee, and it launched its tentacles at Junmo and the others. Lee started chasing after the tentacles with Achilyu's spear in hand, and as he ran he realized that he wasn't going to make it in time. So he shouted unlock to unlock the power of Achilyu's spear again. However, he received a message from the system, warning him that trying to unlock the power of Achilyu's spear again will consume a large amount of mana, and after the unlock Lee will only have 11% of his mana remaining. Lee proceeded with the unlock, and afterwards he pulled back the spear, and he started charging up a skill. And after the skill was ready he swung the spear. As he did this he called out to Minty, and he told him to step to the front with his shield. Lee attacked the zombie king's tentacles, slightly moving some of the tentacles of course, and Minty was able to block the remaining. Then Lee used his metal manipulation ability to bring one of the mana potions to him. Junmo and the others checked up on Minty, whose shield had broken, and Minty told them he was fine. After grabbing hold of the potion, Lee swiftly opened and consumed it. The potion granted him continuous mana recovery for 5 minutes, and after drinking the potion Lee called out to the zombie king, referring to it as glowy eyes again, and he expressed that he was its opponent. Then Lee shot all of the metal beads at the zombie king. The beads made contact with the zombie king's barrier, and Lee tried using metal smash to bypass the barrier, and as the beads shattered, he fired the cloud blade at the zombie king. However, his attack couldn't penetrate the zombie king's barrier. The zombie king grabbed hold of Lee's cloud blade, looking at it as if it was a toothpick. Lee gritted his teeth in annoyance. He expected the barrier would be a problem since earlier, however it was proving more annoying than he anticipated. And he was now in a position where if he kept carelessly firing his weapons at the zombie king, he would end up losing them all. The king quickly countered by launching its tentacles at Lee. Lee activated his body strengthening skill and he grabbed hold of the tentacles. Lee knew that the option to retreat to look for the zombie king's weakness wasn't there because the zombie king would try to attack Junmo and the others. The zombie king launched multiple attacks at Lee using its tentacles, and Lee dodged using the skill combo. Meanwhile, Junmo and the others watched, but Kyunjin grabbed the vase he stole earlier, and he lifted it in the air, preparing to smash it on the ground. As he dodged the attacks, Lee looked around. A prompt from earlier stated that the zombie king's descent wasn't complete yet, and from this Lee concluded that he must have a visible flaw. The zombie king continued its attack, and Lee continued to dodge while looking for a sign of weakness. Meanwhile, Kyunjin smashed the vase on the ground, and because of the sound Junmo and the others turned their attention to him, and they asked him what he was doing. The sound also got the zombie king's attention. The vase shattering on the ground revealed a set of lungs, and Kyunjin pulled out a shiny blade, and he lifted it in the air, preparing to stab the set of lungs. Junmo started to stop him. He asked him about the blade, and he reminded him that he can't just mess with objects from inside the dungeon, since they wouldn't know what kind of reaction it will cause. Kyunjin expressed that he knew that already, but at the rate things were going they were all going to get annihilated. He calculated that they were holding Lee back from retreating and finding the zombie king's weakness, so he felt like he must do something. Junmo gritted his teeth, however he didn't try to stop Kyunjin because he knew he was correct. The zombie king aimed his fist at Junmo and the others. Junmo noticed this and he shouted for Kyunjin to hurry and stab the set of lungs. Following this, the zombie king swiftly launched its tentacles at them. However, Kyunjin was able to stab the set of lungs before the tentacles could reach them. The zombie king dropped to his knees and it cried out in anguish. Its tentacles moved about frantically, causing them to miss Junmo and the others. However, the frantic movements allowed the tentacles to destroy the room Junmo and the others were in. Lee quickly made his way over and he called out in a desperate tone, asking his comrades to say something if they were alive. Junmo spoke, telling Lee that they were all fine. Lee let out a sigh of relief, then he turned to the zombie king with an agitated expression, questioning what was happening. The zombie king, who was still on its knees, held its chest and it continued to cry out in pain. It looked back to one of the pillars and it shattered the vase, revealing a heart. This shocked Lee and he questioned why a heart was appearing all of the sudden. Then he turned his attention to Junmo and the others, and he realized that what Kyunjin stabbed was a set of lungs. The zombie king infused the heart into its chest, and as its power and mana surged, it let out a battle cry. It was so loud that Junmo and the others had to cover their ears. Then a prompt appeared, stating that the descent of the zombie king Baron Samedi was forced to restart, and currently that descent was sitting at 66.6%. Another prompt appeared, but this time it issued a warning that the spirit of incomplete death is starting to run through the zombie king. And because of this, the level restriction of the gate was raised from level 30 to level 53. Lee grinned. With this he figured out the zombie king's weakness. He noted that those vases serve a similar purpose to the canopic jars of Egypt, which stored a mummy's organs. So in short, the zombie king is like a mummy and his heart probably contained its spirit, which explained the surge in its power. But Lee realized that that also meant its heart was its weakness. And with the zombie king's guard down like this, it should be relying on nothing but its barrier. Lee took aim with his left hand and he fired Failnaught. Failnaught made contact with the zombie king's barrier, and because of the weapon's magic resistance, it was able to break through the barrier and make contact with the zombie king's heart. The zombie king was taken aback, but before Lee could celebrate, a prompt appeared, stating that the zombie king's body is quickly healing through the descent effect. The zombie king glared at Lee with a grin, and it launched its tentacles at him. As the tentacles drew closer, Lee pulled back Achilles' spear, and before he threw the spear he remarked that the zombie king shouldn't grin because his real attack was coming now. Because of the spear's ability to inflict wounds that wouldn't be healed easily, Lee was confident that it could bypass the zombie king's annoying healing ability. He threw the spear, and as he did this he shouted unlock. The spear broke through some of the zombie king's tentacles, and it landed a devastating blow to the zombie king's heart. The zombie king cried out in pain, and Lee tried using the combo skill to dodge the remaining tentacles. However, as he attempted to use the combo skill, he received a message from the system, stating that he had no mana left. As he came to the realization that he might be screwed, Lee fixated his gaze on the tentacles. He was able to dodge the initial tentacle, however the others were hot on his trail. Luckily, before he was hit, Minty moved in between him and the tentacle, and he blocked one of the 3 remaining tentacles. Lee shouted at him, questioning what he was doing. Minty ignored Lee, and as the 2 remaining tentacles approached, he shouted deploy shield out loud, and a barrier in the shape of a shield appeared in front of him. The barrier deflected the 2 remaining tentacles, and afterwards Minty turned to Lee, and he asked him if he was okay. Lee looked up at him with a dazed expression on his face, and he asked Minty about the skill he just used. Minty explained to Lee that after entering the dungeon, he leveled up at a dizzyingly high speed. And the last time he blocked the zombie king's attack, he leveled up, and along with the level up he received a message from the system congratulating him for reaching level 20. And he was granted the new skill Magic Shield. The skill deploys a magic shield that boosts physical defense using mana. Minty exclaimed in an excited tone that he finally gained a shield skill, just like Lee said he would, and he remarked that the world standard might not be trash after all. Lee interjected, questioning how Minty could trust a skill he never used before, and he told him that if the skill had failed he would have died. Minty shifted his gaze to the ground, and in a saddened tone, he told Lee that he knows, it's just that he wanted to protect him. With a smile, Lee patted him on the helmet, stating that he gets what Minty is saying. But he reminded him that it's his responsibility to protect him and the others, so he asked him not to push himself too much. Minty became flustered, and he thanked Lee, but Lee told him to save it for when they get out of here in one piece. Then a warning was issued out. The prompt stated that due to the constant damage being inflicted, the forceful resuming of the zombie king's descent has been cancelled. The zombie king roared, then another warning was issued. The prompt stated that the incomplete spirit of death is encroaching over the zombie king's body, and it will soon break down and return to death. Suddenly, the zombie king launched its tentacles in all directions, causing damage to the walls and ground of the castle. From the movement of the tentacles, it was evident that the zombie king couldn't control its body anymore, and Lee looked up at the king with an annoyed expression on his face. Then he gritted his teeth, and he questioned if this was the zombie king's last-ditch effort. He pondered if it was trying to take them down with it. Junmo and the others swiftly ran out of the room they were in, and as they ran out he ordered Taeyong to stay back and block the vision of the zombie king as much as he could by shooting it. Taeyong quickly took aim, and he started shooting at the zombie king's eyes. The barrier was able to block the bullets, however the zombie king was still disoriented. Junmo and the others opened fire on the tentacles that were being shot everywhere, and as this went on, Junmo expressed to the others that they will be executing a disturbance tactic until Lee recovers his mana. Lee called out to him, then with his voice raised, he told him not to pull any dangerous stunts. Junmo turned to Lee, and in a determined tone he asked Lee to let them buy him some time so he could deal the final blow. Lee was taken aback, but in his current state he couldn't do anything. So he hung back as Junmo and the others distracted the zombie king. His mana began to rise, and a few minutes later he was at 6% mana, but it wasn't enough. Junmo and the others were doing a good job distracting the zombie king and dodging its tentacles, and some time later Lee's mana rose to 12%. But as time went on, Junmo and the others started to struggle against the tentacle. Lee glared at his mana and he gritted his teeth in annoyance. But shortly after, Lee's mana rose to 19%. And just in time because Taeyong announced that he was out of bullets, and Kyunjin lost his gun while trying to dodge a tentacle. Lee started running towards the zombie king, and as he ran he called out to it, referring to it as glowy eyes again, and he told it that its real enemy was here. The tentacle came for Lee, and Lee jumped in the air using the skill combo, and he was able to maneuver on the tentacle using the combo skill as well. He drew Fail Not and the Cloud Blade towards him using his metal manipulation ability. And as he got closer, Lee noted that the way to take down the zombie king must be to destroy his organs. There were 3 canopus vases, and inside each was a lung, heart, and Lee thought to himself that the remaining one must be its eyes. He jumped in the air using the skill combo, and he grabbed hold of Fail Not, then he threw Fail Not at the zombie king's eye. The arrow was able to break through the zombie king's barrier, and using this opportunity, Lee grabbed hold of the Cloud Blade, and he jumped through the barrier. And after landing on the zombie king's eyebrow, he lifted the Cloud Blade up, and he remarked that if the zombie king is a king then it should act like it and stop acting so disgracefully. And as he stabbed the zombie king in the eye, he expressed that it should get the hell out of here. After stabbing the zombie king in the eye, Lee received a message from the system, telling him that the Cloud Blade was being infused with an unknown energy. The zombie king stumbled back as it cried out in pain, and Lee jumped off of its eyebrow. The zombie king crashed to the floor, and this was followed by a message from the system, congratulating Lee and the others for having slain the zombie king Baron Samedi. Junmo and the others were stunned. Minty spoke, questioning if they really just took down the zombie king, and with a dazed expression Junmo stated that it looks that way. They all started cheering, and Lee, who was able to land on the ground safely, pulled out a golden crown from the zombie king's corpse. As he grabbed hold of the crown, he received a message from the system congratulating him for having acquired the Crown of Light and Darkness, a mythological rank item that can rapidly boost resistance against undead properties. It also had special features, but they were currently locked to Lee. Lee observed the item. He didn't know what it was because he never came across it in his previous life, and on top of that the special features mentioned by the system was making him curious. Then a prompt appeared warning Lee and the others that the destruction of Ndako and the zombie king's now ownerless castle has started. Shortly after the prompt appeared, the castle started breaking down, and as debris from the ceiling fell on them, Junmo called out to Lee, questioning what they should do. Lee looked around with an agitated expression on his face. He was upset because the castle breaking down will prevent them from farming points and items. With no other choice, he ordered his comrades to evacuate. They were able to exit the castle just as it collapsed on itself, and as they were catching their breath, a prompt appeared, stating that because Lee and the others succeeded at the raid, the gate would now close. Lee turned his attention to the closing gate, and he ordered the others to start running again. Outside the gate, Catherine, alongside the man in suit, and some Blue Flower Guild members stood checking the new update to the restrictions of the gate. After checking the new restrictions, the man in suit questioned how they are supposed to raid this gate successfully with a level 53 restriction. Not to mention independent deployment by the Blue Flower Guild might become an issue later on. Catherine spoke to the man in suit in an agitated tone, questioning what else they could do. She asked him if he was going to take responsibility if the Gugwing group stopped supporting the Blue Flower Guild. As she asked this, they noticed that the gate was closing. The other Blue Flower Guild members couldn't believe their eyes. They questioned if the raid squad and the Vanguard actually succeeded in clearing the raid. Junmo and the others hastily jumped out of the gate, and Lee followed behind. Seeing the soldiers jump through the gate left Catherine and the man in suit in a daze. They couldn't take their eyes off of Junmo and the others as they rejoiced about making it out of the gate alive. Lee called his comrades to attention, and he praised them all for doing a good job during the raid. And afterwards he announced that as of this time, the raid gate mission is all clear. Junmo and the others started cheering. Lee smiled, and he joined his comrades in cheering. Catherine bit her bottom lip, questioning if she was actually seeing this correctly. She asked the man in suit if those second-rate military dregs just cleared the red gate. The man in suit was too stunned to speak, and Catherine thought to herself, questioning who the hell Lee is. Inside the gate, TCO quickly ran back to the location of the castle, which was no longer there. He exclaimed that he ran here as soon as the gate clear message popped up, and he looked around questioning if the gate shouldn't be around here. He looked around desperately, and he questioned why he wasn't seeing the gate. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the vampire glaring at him behind a pillar. TCO tried to run away, but the vampire spoke, asking him not to go. TCO stopped. He looked back questioning why the vampire was trying to scare him when he was human. He asked the vampire, who was still hiding behind the pillar, if he was from the rescue squad. And before the vampire could answer, TCO let out a sigh of relief, and he remarked that he was totally freaking out because he thought he was locked up in here. Then he expressed with an awkward smile that they should get out of here, and he asked the vampire about the way out. The vampire suddenly disappeared from behind the pillar, and he appeared behind TCO with his fangs revealed, and he pulled down TCO's collar, stating that he needs blood. The vampire drained TCO dry, and afterwards he recalled Lee's devilish grin. Then he turned around with an agitated expression and face covered in TCO's blood, and the vampire remarked that he is going to take everything Lee cherishes and smear it all with blood. You made it to the end of the video. If you want to see more, then hit the like button. Also, while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe.